And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. We're here with Thomas from Canada Soccer Daily to talk about Toronto FC and their 2024 season. Thomas, how you doing?
Doing good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, really excited to have you here talking about what may or may not be a good or a really bad Toronto team. I'm sure we'll dive into that in a little bit. Um, really excited to have you. Your experience and stuff in the booth across all of Canadian soccer is going to be really exciting. So, um, really happy to have you on, and happy to have you participate. Hopefully, with a cool scarf in Scarf of the Week. What are you rocking today?
I do actually. And some TFC fans might actually take this, a bit personally because it's actually TFC City from TFC City rivals. So, uh, Work United, who plays in the north, like GTA side of the city, is their supporters group, the Northern Quarter. You might not be able to see it there because of the blur, but it's, um, it's a great supporters group. That's how I originally got involved in the CPL. By just kind of going over to their supporter stand and there's a great atmosphere there. And again, some TFC fans might not like to hear it, but York is a great club with some great supporters. That's eventually one day, maybe even this year, just based on where the two teams are in the with signings and everything, that maybe could challenge TFC if they get a meeting in the Canadian Championship or anything. So yeah, the Northern Quarter, the supporters group for York United.
Love that. We've seen so many really cool ones here, and our favorites are always the supporter scarves because like the supporters section scarves. So super cool to bring that on. We appreciate that. Connor, I didn't even introduce you. How you doing,
No,
buddy?
you didn't. You
Yeah,
completely skipped over me. Might
yeah.
as well
Who?
not even be here.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's every episode, isn't it?
That's not true.
How you doing, buddy?
I was doing better before you skipped over me like I wasn't even here.
That's all right. Then I'm doing my job as the host to make you put you in your place. You know what
Humble
scarf you
me.
rock? What scarf you rocking today?
So I've been on a little bit of a bad stretch on not having scarves for teams, but luckily today I'm back on track and it's upside down. Hold on.
Nice.
Well, they printed one side right side up and then the other side upside down. But I have my very lovely Toronto FC scarf right here. Actually, one of my favorites. I think the colors are really nice. The touch with the maple leaves is also really nice. So I'm a big fan of this one.
Yeah, dude, I don't remember the last time you brought that out, but it looks awesome. Like I feel like it should be brought out more, regardless of,
Well,
what we're doing.
maybe Toronto need to get their act together if I'm going to bring it out more.
um, I'm rocking one that I don't love that much, right? It's very plain. It's got the leaf on one side, the logo. You flip it around, and it's just a bar with the red stripes. I think there.
Hmm.
Like it's
Huh.
it's very bland.
Little lackluster, yeah.
Yeah, very bland. The material's not great, but it's a TFC scarf. It counts. We're gonna take it. But it may mean that we need to go on the search for some York scarves because they seem much cooler and much more involved. So we might need to keep that with us and see where that takes us.
If you guys are ever in Toronto, it's a good club to check out too. Yeah. But I like how you guys both went for TFC and I went for the city rivals, even though I actually also have a TFC scarf. But I figured,
There you
don't
go.
have to. This, soccer in Toronto day. We'll call it, not just TFC.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Mix it up a little bit. So as much as we want to talk about other rivals and scarves, it's really the episodes about TFC 2024 season. We got John Herdman taking over. The former men's national team coach for Canada is in charge for his first season, coaching a club team ever, if my records are correct. So he's looking to rebuild both the style of play and the locker room culture fractured by superstars and super egos. Last season, yikes. 15th in the East, 29th overall, the Wooden Spoon. 22 points, 4 wins, 20 losses, 10 draws, and of course, a missed playoffs. In Toronto or in Canadian soccer, spheres, what is the vibe like around John Herdman coming in? Anything Toronto, really.
Well, I mean, I think the interesting thing is that since John Herdman's come in for TFC, the vibes haven't really changed too much. There was very little movement in the off season. And of course, just as a result of that, stick Herdman making pretty bold decision to kind of stick with, for the most part, the same last place team from 2023. People are definitely still talking about TFC as Canada's third MLS team. Vancouver Whitecaps are, in the Champions Cup, drawing with Tigres and doing very good back-to-back Voyageurs Cup champions. CF Montreal, not great last year and a bit of dysfunction in the organization, but still making signings like Joseph Martinez, and their fortunes are already on the upswing again. But for TFC, the vibe is just still they were once kind of the model club of Canada, and now they've fallen behind significantly. Herdman is definitely, in my opinion, the best choice for this team, because if you're looking at how he rebuilt the Canadian men's national team, um, there's the story of on his first day in training, there were two fights in practice. And then gradually through the years, he built them up with that brotherhood mentality that they've talked about so much. So I think that at this point for TFC, with all the dysfunction, with all the, maybe different kind of cliques in the locker room, maybe you've got these superstars that obviously are bringing in their, Insigne and his entourage all came to Canada, but then you've got these young Canadian players that maybe not feel like they're there yet. Herdman is the best type of guy to kind of bridge the gap and really get the mentality straight again.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited for Herdman's appointment, but curious to what he can do with what he's got. So it'll be definitely something to see. But I think you definitely made a good point that they were the third team in Canada, and that's kind of the vibe right now. I mean, you could have told me that Toronto FC just wasn't a team anymore, and you wouldn't have to convince me very hard because they did so little in or out, really. And it felt like they almost just were non-existent for this off season, which is kind of crazy for a team that finished dead last. So I guess the one it's kind of tough to pick because I think they've only made one so far outside of a super draft pick. But notes on their addition, Deby Flores, I guess is the only one we can really talk about.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you say, with the super draft, that was, I suppose, maybe that's what they were banking on for a really good player. Um, and I mean, you got to keep in mind, obviously, there is still that third DP spot, I believe, because I believe, I'm not entirely sure, but there was something with Osorio about his contract maybe being changed around a little bit. I'm not completely sure about that, but there might be a third designated player spot they could use. Anyway, yeah, Debut Flores is a defensive midfielder from Honduras. He has experience in MLS with the Whitecaps. He won the 2015 Voyageurs Cup with them, so obviously some good experience there against Toronto, Montreal, and some other of the MLS teams. Um, and he's coming and not he's not an older player, but he has a good amount of experience abroad, in Honduras and elsewhere. That especially for a group on defense that has, a lot of these players on defense are very, young, and across the roster too, young raw Canadian talent for the most part. Um, he can definitely kind of establish himself as kind of a calming figure in the team. The TFC conceded a lot of goals, and if he can kind of calm that down maybe when they've conceded, or even prevent a few from going into the back of the net, that would be greatly appreciated for TFC. And he's also someone who, Jonathan Osorio, he's a player of few words, but he called Davy Flores a warrior, and he said some very good things about him in his first press conference. Osorio is a club captain now, so those words definitely do speak volumes about the type of player that he is. I think he's going to be a great addition.
Yeah, yeah, he looks like he's got all the tools. But I'll let Connor. Connor, what do you think about the move? Or if you want to talk about maybe their draft pick, I don't know which one you did more research on.
Yeah, I said Flores mainly because that was kind of the only option as we talked about. Um, I still think it's a good addition, just considering there really aren't a ton of defensive mids on the roster right now. There's a couple of other midfielders like Osorio, but I think he's more attacking than he is defending. Um, and then also Brandon Servania, which feel like you can maybe go either way, but I think Flores is better just as an outright defensive mid. Seems to be a really hardworking player. And for me, I think a team that is down in spirits like Toronto may be, just coming off of last season, I think it's good to add someone who's going to work hard and bust his butt on the field. Maybe that can even be an inspiration to a couple of other players on the field. Seeing their teammate work so hard, maybe they get inspired by that, or maybe they just feel that they need to match that level then while they're on the field. So I think the addition, even though it is the only one of the only ones, so it's kind of like the best addition by just kind of the only addition, but I do actually think it's a pretty solid addition for Toronto.
Yeah, Connor, I think you hit it on the head there. I mean, when you're talking about teams that are down bad, for lack of a better term, um, you need incoming players who are willing to do dirty work to set a foundation, right? That's such a massive part of a rebuild is you don't get out of rebuild by spending lots of money on people who don't want to, fix the real problems, which was, you know, attacking and defending. I mean, they were terrible on both sides of the ball, but defense wins championships, defense wins games, right? So, they've got issues all over the park, but the spine, the center of your field, and that number six role is such a massive, massive point to fix, and especially when you're looking at something where you're like, all right, we've got one signing to make. Where is it going to be? You can makeshift somebody up top who's going to create goals from the wings or whatever, but somebody who's going to go in and cover 10 miles and stick in 15 tackles a game, whatever those stats end up being when he gets in there, is a great addition. That being said, it's still been a very underwhelming window. I think there's so much that needs to be fixed, and it's been very, very underwhelming that they haven't done much, especially because they've seen a lot of guys go out the door. So, Thomas, I want to ask you first. Biggest loss of this team from the 2023 season, if you could pick one from a team that won 4 games?
Well, I mean, I think with the four wins, as you say, it's hard to just pick one. Obviously, the joke was that TFC had as many jerseys last year than as wins. So maybe taking away one of those jerseys that lowers the standard a little bit. So maybe that's the biggest loss. But I mean, I would say honestly, as many players as you could get out the door was probably good for them. Obviously, yeah, you had Sapong who left, but he never really wanted to be there. I don't know if you saw his interview about his year at TFC and just how awful it was. I guess I would say Lucas McNaughton. They traded him last year, and since they traded him last year, which I mean, I guess this wasn't something that was a player's choice. This was the club's decision, but they got rid of him. He went to Nashville. He's locked up a starting position with a much better team. Was a fixture of them getting to Leagues Cup. He had to mark Lionel Messi twice and did a pretty good job actually of it. And I just think that he's a guy that you look at as a young domestic player. He went to the University of Toronto, um, came up through the CPL system, and I feel like the loss of a player like that can't really be overstated. He's just he's a great defender, and again, that's something that this team wants, as you guys were talking about.
Yeah, we just chatted with Club and Country for Nashville SC, and when we talked about players who could have a really big impact this year, it was no hesitation that Lucas McNaughton was one of those guys. And for all the reasons that you just mentioned was, he's got a whole bunch of tools that make him a very strong defender in certain systems, and he thinks he's going to do really well at Nashville. And I bet you Toronto would want him back right now. But Connor, your thoughts on biggest loss?
Yeah, I kind of had the same initial thought here of, it'd be easy to say there really is no biggest loss after the disastrous season Toronto just had, but unironically, I think out of the players that have left this winter, I think I'm gonna go Michael Bradley here.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I feel like with the team in a rebuilding year, well, potentially in a rebuilding year, even though they put nobody new in, uh, and possibly giving more chances to younger players. I think having that veteran presence and leadership like Michael Bradley could be pretty useful for the young guys. If they're finally getting their chances in the team, I think he could be either just a calming presence in practices or off the bench, or even if he is in the game. Um, I think he could have been useful if some of these young guys get their chances this year. In terms of production, even though his level was really not there anymore in the last season, he still, I think, played the most minutes out of anybody else that left. And just, I think that's kind of why I ultimately landed on him, even though we like to joke about Michael Bradley a lot on the show. But the other choices just really weren't wowing me. They just either really didn't have an impact at all, or like Thomas said, it's CJ Sapong who didn't even want to be there in the first place.
Red Bull makes the world takes. Connor, you can't get away from him. How crazy is that? Um, for me, again, tough to pick a worse departure from a team that won 4 games, but um, it was the second worst defense in the league. And I think a guy like Amy Mabika, who was traded there, he got put into a bad situation. And I think that he would have benefited from a coach like Herdman, where he comes in with a set game plan, a set attitude, a set coaching philosophy that says, this is how I want you to play. So we're going to coach you to be this type of player based off of what we've seen in your successes and your failures. This is what we want to do with you. Um, I think Herdman could have done really well with him and turned him into something a little bit better. I'm also surprised that he hasn't been picked up yet by, at least at the date of recording this, he hasn't been picked up by anybody, which is very surprising because I thought, he getting drafted out to Inter Miami and then moving over to Toronto, I think he's had a ton of potential. And even if he hasn't landed in a place like MLS Next Pro or even USL Championship or USL One, I think he's got all that talent to do something like that. So, not gonna throw things out there, but Lexington SC starts their season soon, and he went to University of Kentucky. So
Yeah, exactly. So you're just biased and you're a Kentucky homer, and
listen,
that's why you
I'm
picked them.
not I'm not saying that they've been out spending money on a ridiculous amount of players. They brought in like Cameron Lannister, who's a USL Championship leading scorer. Whole nightmare. Anyway, we're not doing a
don't
Lexington SC pod, but
don't go on
um,
tangents.
what we do want to talk about, as we mentioned, it's a team that really is relatively unchanged and was very, very poor last year, meaning that there is going to have to be somebody to step up and be better than they were last year. Thomas, I want to ask you first, which do you think is a player that might be able to break out this year? Maybe have one of those years where they put up 2 goals, 4 assists last year, and they turn it into 10 and 5 or something like that.
Well, there's a few options. I think there's a high ceiling for a lot of these players, and to an extent, I think just given the way that we've talk a little bit about their desire to stay here, you could maybe even throw the Italian duo into that mix a little bit. But I would say Prince Ose Owusu. So he's a striker, and TFC have a wide variety of options at striker. For a team that didn't score many goals last year, they have a lot of different options. They could try a few things with a second striker, or experiment with them as a number 10. But I think Prince Ose Owusu, he was signed last year from, I believe, Jan Regensburg. Um, and he didn't get to play much. He didn't get to play much, but he has shown some potential in Germany, and I just feel like if with two with just the best wingers, that could be the best wingers in MLS, and Bernardeschi and Insigne. I think once you establish a target man, they can have a big breakout year. And I feel like Owusu is the type of person that could be right in that mix. And at the same time, Another guy that didn't get to play last year, but was signed from Mamelodi Sundowns, which is one of the biggest clubs in Africa, Cassius Melula. Again, just not many looks at him last year, and that was kind of the the big problem with some of the stuff that happened at TFC last year. They were so bad under, the coaches after Bob Bradley, that they couldn't. There was no point in really playing these new signings. So I feel like maybe you could even classify a guy like Milula or Wusu as winter deals because we haven't gotten to see them truly in in a TFC shirt yet. But Milula, he was acquired for about 2.2 million Canadian dollars. He has a lot of potential. So he is a winger, but I have a feeling that we could see him in some sort of other forward position. He has 6 goals to his name in the CAF Champions League, so a lot of pedigree. I feel like him and Owusu could sort of, bring some new life into the team.
Yeah, I think those are two really great choices. I'm actually going to piggyback off of you there because I also picked Cassius Mailula. So the team only scored 26 goals last year, which is unbelievable when you consider how much money is being paid to Insigne and Bernadeschi. Um, just ridiculous. But Cassius Mailula integrates pretty well, I think, to the side, like you mentioned, because of those two Italians. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in a more advanced, true number 9, maybe even an offset 9 role. Also, there are rumors surrounding both of those Italians that they might not be here. So wherever he ends up, he might make an impact. But we only saw him play 68 total minutes last year. So we're not quite sure what he's going to bring. But for the price that he was brought in at, you expect a lot out of him. So I'm keeping an eye on him. Connor, who are
And
you
only
keeping?
22 as well.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Thomas.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say, yeah, he is only 22 as well, so he brings all that youth and exuberance to the team. And Herdman's probably gonna focus a lot on the young players, so it can just be. I have a feeling that he could be, that's another reason why he could have a lot of success. But yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, totally a fair point, right? And that again, kind of transitioning away from the old guard that was a part of the 2017, huge treble run, and moving more towards the next step, because I think that's kind of one of the things that fell into their laps and became a problem last year was they relied so much, as Connor had to convince me to get away from their predictions last year. They had 3 central midfielders, and one of them, and they all 3 of them played 3,000 minutes in 2022, and they just ran back with them again in 23. And it was one of those, you can't expect success out of something like that. And now they're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do next? Because they hadn't really planned for it. But Connor, I'll let you jump in then on your player to watch.
So I'm gonna cheat a little bit here
Boo.
because I'm between two players, and I'm gonna let the Toronto fans go with whoever is gonna get the more game time here. But I am between Shaquille Marshall-Ruddy or DeAndre Kerr. And
Mm.
I'm not sure what the game time's gonna look like. I mean, they are bloated at the attacker spot. I mean, there's just a ton of strikers and wingers on this team. And if Insigne and Bernadette are still here, I find it hard to believe that anybody outside of those two play in the winger spots. Although maybe I'm misremembering, but I could have sworn Bernadeschi was like a right wing back at some point last season. So who knows? Maybe they could go back to that again and it opens up a winger spot. So Kerr might not necessarily get the game time that he would need to necessarily be a breakout, but he got some game time last year, about 1,200 minutes, had 5 goals, 1 assist. I think that was pretty good output considering I don't think many neutrals around the league really were expecting to hear much about DeAndre Kerr, but in the little bits that I did hear about Toronto, I feel like I was seeing his name a lot. So if he got the game time this year, I could definitely see him doing good things and being a potential breakout. And then Jaquil Marshall-Rutty, that's a name I've known for a little while now. I feel like there's been a lot of big potential associated with his name. And he's kind of a weird spot because he's labeled as a right back on transfer market, but I feel like he's kind of more like a right winger. And his numbers kind of looked like that. He had really strong attacking numbers, but defensive numbers aren't necessarily there. In terms of the right backs, the out and out right backs listed on the I mean, they only have three fullbacks on the roster right now. So there's a decent chance he gets pretty good minutes at that right back spot if they do decide to play him there. And if that's the case, then I think consistent minutes for him would be massive for helping him hit that potential that he has. My only concern for him is the defensive side of the ball. If they go for four in the back, I don't know if he's the guy to be the four in the back, right back to handle those defensive duties, but for sure he's going to be able to aid in the attack, and I still think he'll be a good addition to the team, regardless whether he is playing a four in the back or more as a winger, wing back, whatever he ends up playing on the right side.
I really like that, Connor, because DeAndre Kerr, we all know about Jaquil Marshall already, but DeAndre Kerr comes out of the very long list of successful Syracuse draft picks who are being linked or have already made moves overseas. So I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out and does something like that again. Follows in our friend Tajon Buchanan's footsteps. Good old Tajon. So here is the question, and the question goes to Thomas, and the question is, Thomas, what is your question? And by that I mean,
could you make that a little bit more confusing?
Do you want me to? I can try.
I don't know if you can.
Should I answer that with a question or no? Because I honestly don't know what to do here.
So the segment here is you're watching this season. What is the overarching question that this team needs to answer through the 34, 36 game season that they're about to play? So what's in your head that you want to see them address, kind of?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think the main thing that should be on Herdman's mind is who are you supposed to play? Because this is a bottom feeder, not a contender. So are you playing your big money DPs? Are you raising youth for maybe an MLS Cup run in 5 years? Like, you know, what do you do? What's the strategy? I think it would have been great to have gotten the Italians out on loans or something for the next year or even permanently. I know there was interest in Insigne from Lazio and Bernardeschi and Insigne were both linked to Lazio at one point. Insigne was linked to Nottingham Forest, but those all fell through. So I just feel like the big question for Herdman, who also does know a lot of these young Canadian guys for obvious reasons, it's just who do you play? What's the attitude? Because they're at this weird, time where you've got some great players in their prime. You've got some younger guys. Are you going for Voyageurs Cup in year one? Are you going for MLS playoffs? Like, what's the actual end goal of the season? I suppose that would actually be the best question. What is the end goal of this season?
Perfect. Yeah, that is. I think that's on most of our minds here. Is what does success look like, right? What does success in
Yes.
this first year look like? So that's. I think you knocked that out of the park. For as confusing as I made the initial question sound, I think you hit a home run. So, Connor, what's your question?
So mine's a little bit dependent on if they end up staying, but my question is, do Insigne and Bernardeschi care at all about this season? I mean, we've heard the rumors. There was a lot of frustration last season. They apparently wanted out. There's interest. Do they leave? I don't know. Maybe it's more likely they leave in the summer. So then my question, I guess, more so applies to the first half of the season. Do they care? Are they going to try to put in any effort at all? Are they just going to kind of coast by, collect a paycheck like Pirlo did with NYCFC? I feel like I don't know. I saw something that they both scored in a preseason game, so maybe
Yeah.
that's an encouraging sign. Maybe it's a sign that they're willing to put in the work, or maybe that's just them trying to put in some work to boost their market value a little bit so they get a summer move. But I actually think I like Thomas's question a lot more. I think it's a really valid question because it's like you said, you got a couple guys on this team that are win now kind of guys like Insigne, Bernadeschi, Sean Johnson, and you got a bunch of youth guys who if you go for the win now guys, the youth guys are going to suffer. You know, maybe you don't get as many minutes for Melula or Kerr or Owusu or maybe even Tyrese Spicer, the new draft pick. I
Yeah.
mean, it's definitely a valid question. So I'll share mine, but I like Thomas's better.
My question is kind of alluding back to something I mentioned about John Herdman in our intro, and that's this is his first club coaching gig. So is he going to be able to transition from coaching a meaningful game a week, or maybe I'm sorry, a meaningful game a month, or maybe every couple of months, to once or even twice, or maybe three times a week, depending on how congested those schedules get? It's way tougher than you would think to transition to an everyday sort of outlook. And I'd be interesting to see how he takes that on, because the being a national team manager is a completely different beast than being a club team manager. So definitely something to keep an eye on there. And I think that takes us to a much easier final segment. And I'm going to
Well, you
phrase it
say
very
that. That
simply.
may not be easy.
Oh no, it's got to be easy. At least the phrasing of it will be easy. On the end of decision day, 2024, where's TFC finishing? We'll go to Thomas first.
Ooh, that that's I see a lot of different outcomes for this team because on one hand, the lack of personnel, it I feel like in some ways it could help. It could go either way, and especially with the way Herdman coaches players, it, as you say, adjusting in the club game, one of Herdman's, main selling points is he is a master motivator. But can you be a master motivator when you've got 34 games, maybe just competing for like as a bubble team in the playoffs, plus Leagues Cup and Canadian Championships? So I think, anything. I think TFC, what they have to focus on in this season is because Herdman will be there for the long run. I mean, if let's face it, he's a better hire than Bob Bradley probably ever was. So I think at the end of decision day, TFC, they'll be sitting as a team that has a lot of some memorable moments, but they've come few and far between. So I don't think they're going to be last place. I think they will move up the table. I think, as Connor said with Kerr, Marshall Ruddy, you've also got Cozy Thompson, who, was a little bit older than Marshall Ruddy and Kerr, but is still kind of sort of just breaking out right now. Some intriguing prospects there. And I feel like, yeah, definitely won't be last. Maybe even a bubble playoff team with so many teams in the playoffs now. I think it's 9. I think they could be, around ninth or 10th, maybe competing a bit for that playoff spot. But as long as this team has winning moments that they can build on going into next year, and lessons from the losses, because at one point last year they were just losing every game. It didn't matter. They couldn't get any lessons out of those because it was just the same bad results every week. So I think it's going to be a lot about kind of learning moments, either for positive or negative reasons that, this young team and Herdman in his first year can build on so they can come back better in 2025.
I like the optimism. I like the long-term plan idea. I think that's definitely fair. I'm going to send it to Connor before I dive into this. So Connor, your prediction.
Yeah, you just want me to go first so I can look like the bad guy.
No, I'm going to look like a bad guy, but I want you to do it first.
I, quite frankly and bluntly, I got no faith in this team. I think MLS 4.0, I just don't think you can get away with having a season as bad as Toronto had and not adding anybody new to the team. Maybe 10 years ago you could have got away with it, especially if you had someone like Insigne and Bernadeschi on the team, but they added nobody other than just adding a new coach who has, like Andrew said, no club experience. Um, I feel like the defense is very thin, and quite frankly, I don't think it's very good. The midfield's okay,
Mm.
and the attack I think is a big question mark because it's going to be a question of whether Insigne and Bernadeschi, one, are even here, and two, if they're going to put any effort in this season. And then there's so many other people who can like rotate in and around there. So I guess with all that being said, I think they're probably somewhere between 12th and 15th.
I just want to touch on something Connor said real quick
Yeah, yeah.
about the thin defense. And I think that about as I said, like the moments and positive, negative moments. This team is going to play a lot of entertaining games. I have a lot of faith that they're going to be winning a lot of games, 3-2 or 4-3, because there's only so much the defense can do, but there is a lot that the offense, is capable of if they are at their best. So, that might be a part of it. Some entertaining games. Maybe they'd do anything for a win against Montreal because they haven't beat them in years now. So something like that, an entertaining game against them where they win because of some good attacking. It's like that's the stuff that Herdman should want in year one.
That's the MLS
I
4.0 model we know and love. Got to win
That's
every
right.
game 4-3. Forget about the defense. We don't care about that.
Well, I definitely agree there are going to be some entertaining games. I just don't think you're going to be on the entertaining side of the entertainment. Um, it's not a
Wow.
bold take. This roster stinks, dude. Like a team that couldn't score is going to rely on a couple players that either don't want to be there, think that they're better than being there, and then some players that they signed who are young and unproven and it's a project up top. The midfield is okay at best. Um, I think Dayby Flores is going to be like Stretch Armstrong trying to hold together as much as he can. You've got three center backs on roster, only one of which is serviceable. Sean Johnson's going to be pulling out 20 saves a game. You've lost Richie Larea, who was a big part of it, and I think Marshall Ruddy's going to be okay in the attack. I'm not sure I'll do in the defense. You got one left back on roster. Shane O'Neill has never been one of my favorite guys. I think he's okay. Rosted's going to be serviceable. Luke Singh, I don't know. I'm not sold on him either. I feel like the few games I remember seeing him play, he wasn't stand out amazing. Um, this team, and this might be where my bold take comes in, is going to set a whole bunch of records for the wrong reason this year. Like people are saying wooden spoon on the cards. I think this statistically could be one of the worst teams in MLS history. Like FCC record of goals conceded, minimum number of points. Like that is what the vibe I'm getting from this roster. And it may be harsh. Like I'm putting this on there, but it has all of the pieces coming together in the wrong reasons. Now, again, I'll preface that by saying the transfer window is not closed. There's still tons of work that they can do, but I don't think a new coach and a number six is going to fix all of your issues yet last year. And then whoever you brought in close to the end of the year, those guys aren't going to fix the issues that I think you see. So maybe going out on a limb here, this team might be like historically terrible.
Is that one of your bold predictions? Did you
Well, I'm not
spoil
trying
one
to
of your
give
bold
anything away
predictions?
here. I'm not trying to give anything away here, but
I don't
it
know if
might
I'd
be.
go that far to just say that they're going to be the worst team in MLS history. I mean,
Well,
if
that's because you
Insigne
don't
and
have any.
Bernadette, if Insigne and Bernadette are still going to be here, I think they're still going to score goals and provide in the attack. I think there's some good young players still in this team. I don't know if they're going to be the worst in history, but I mean, I'm on the same page that I don't think they're going to be very good, but I don't know. That felt a little extreme.
In case you're
My
wondering where my
attitude is that
rank,
it just has to be better than last year. Like it cannot. I just personally I feel like that team, maybe not historically bad, but that was just by far and away the worst team in MLS. And I just think it's they're gonna have that a bit of a new manager boost, new morale boost, and just it has to be better than last year because I don't think that this team is capable of being that bad 2 years in a row.
I think that's a fair point. The one thing I'll preface this with is I think it weighs a lot on the first three games. If you go out
Yeah.
and win your first three games and their spirits high, you'll go out through the rest of the season, no problem at all. If you go out and you drop three duds and you get beat 4-0, 3-1, 3-0, Herdman's going to lose the locker room. It's going to be game over. But
Yeah.
that's my worry with this side is they're so few players who can push through the adversity, I'll say, and become a little bit more um tougher, I think is the term I'm going to use, through that adversity and through those moments that you put 2 or 3 losses in a row and it's over. And that's what I'm worried about with this team. And that's kind of what you saw last year. And I don't know if Herdman is enough to change that. I think he changed it for some people, but not the people that you need it to change. So I'm okay going on record being the bold one. Connor doesn't have any
that's a fair point.
I
Listen,
don't think Connor has any
we do
guts
bold
to.
predictions every year. Mine,
Yeah,
I'm
and
just
they're so
keeping a
boring.
secret.
They're like, oh my god, San Jose is going to make the playoffs, and Daniel's
And then
going to
guess
be
what? San Jose made
like,
the
you're so
playoffs.
boring. All righty.
For
Well,
like what, one game or whatever it was.
yeah, exactly. You
I'll
snuck
take it.
in.
They were like bottom of the Western Conference for like 3 years in a row, so I'll take it.
Yeah, that's the Connor mindset is as long as it hits. So Thomas, I want to thank you so much for being here with us today. It was really a good time chatting TFC with you. We want to give you a minute to plug where our fans can find you. So go ahead, let them know.
Yeah, on Twitter at ThomasFear22 and online, CanadianSoccerDaily.com and Waking the Red, which is a pretty well-known TFC blog that's also associated with Canadian Soccer Daily. So you'll be able to find it easily through the website.
Awesome, y'all. Well, go show him some love. Go get him some subscribers. Read some of his stuff because he covers all of Canadian soccer, not just your lowly Toronto FC. Sorry, now I'm just piling on. Now I'm being mean. Not just Toronto FC. So make sure you go give him a follow. Say what's up. And if you enjoyed what we're doing here, we got another half of the league still to go. So make sure you subscribe to see all of that and stick around for our MLS season. Grace wants to say goodbye. Say bye-bye, Grace. Good girl. Thomas, thank you so much for being here. We hope you enjoyed your time here. We enjoyed having you, and we hope everybody enjoyed listening. So we will see everybody next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.